Hello everyone. I'm Marine Van Schenbeck, the director of Thanks for Nothing, and we are here today with the artist Oscar Tuazon and philosopher Emanuele Coccia for a conversation that actually has been done in advance of the symposium at the Louvre Museum because Oscar lives in California, but we really wanted him to be part of this symposium and to share his project, the Water School, with you. So as you can see, the conversation is recorded, and we're gonna now listen to Emanuele's conversation and Oscar's conversation. And as an introduction, I want to thank them both very much for being part of the symposium. As you know, this year and as we have been discovered it in the previous roundtables, we're talking about the living, and we thought that Oscar's practice and Emanuele's researches and books and commitments to the living were so important that we should brought them together today. So I will just make a short presentation of Oscar's work as an artist and also of Emmanuel's work as a philosopher. So Oscar Toison, thank you again very much for being here. So you work with architectural techniques, materials, creating sculptures and structures that are made of steel, glass, wood, majority. Your handbuilt sculptures are often quasi-functional objects or models for various spaces. I think what is really interesting about your work is that the construction process itself can be seen as a performative dimension of your work. And we also know that to carry on this process and this artwork, you have been working with designers, engineers, but also builders, making a real reference to land art and minimalism in a contemporary art. So you had a lot of exhibition around the globe, a lot of exhibition in the US and in Europe. And we're going to talk specifically today about a triptych exhibition that you have this year in 2023. So first, the Water School project in Bergen in Norway, then All We Need at the Kunsthal Bielefeld in Germany, and then building at the Kunstmuseum in Switzerland, the Kunstmuseum Winterthur at the Kunstmuseum in Switzerland, sorry. But you also had solo show at the Aspen Museum of Art, at the Bellevue Museum of Art in Seattle, at the museum, the Hammer Museum in LA, the Consortium in Dijon, here in France, but also at the Ludwig Museum in Cologne, the Boijmans Museum in Rotterdam, and at the Centre International d'Art et du Paysage de Vestivierre en 2009. And it is a reference also to the roundtable that we had at noon with Gilles Clément and Alexandra McIntosh, the director of the Centre d'Art. Then Emanuele Coccia, so you are an associate professor at l'EHESS here in Paris since 2011. And before that, you were a professor at the University of Freiburg. You were also invited as a research fellow in many, many universities, I have to say, such as the University of Tokyo, Buenos Aires, Düsseldorf, and Columbia University in New York City. You have many publications, and we can mention some of them, such as La vie sensible, Le bien dans les choses, and you worked also with Giorgio Agamben, and you have edited a comprehensive anthology of texts on angels across the Abrahamic traditions. So now I'm gonna let you talk about the Water School project that we're gonna focus on. I think, Oscar, if I'm not wrong, that it also started with a major installation that you did in Art Basel in 2016 with the Zomerlo project that has been presented on Messeplatz, and I'm sure that a lot of people have seen it while in Basel at that time. And it really developed itself through different location, different zone, because you installed those elements in different areas in the US, but you are also planning to have a permanent public water school in Cedar Spring, Nevada. And I think this is a project that is really interesting and really important because it really brings art and awareness to a remote and ecological region where the water, and I think this is very important to you, that has served the community environment for thousands of years, is now at risk. And this is also what you're pointing out, because it can be used in more commercial issue, and this is why you're fighting this. In 2019, you also presented the project at the Michigan State University, linked to the Broad Museum. And it was also a series of meeting, tours, conversation, and really this project has been the site of a living performance, ongoing performances with all the communities around. In 2020, you also developed an exhibition at the Galerie Chantal Crouzel, which was also a series of new works linked to the Water School project. And now I think we can go ahead and talk about the new project that now you're doing in 2023 in those three institutions, and how the development of the Water School will be done by you and all the people that you bring into the project.
So thank you so much, Marine, for the introduction, and thank you, Oscar, for being with us and with me. I'm very happy and honored to have a conversation with you. And before talking about the project and also the last versions of the project, I would like to start at the beginning. So to say, because you were born in a geodesic dome at Indianola, and I would love to know what was the impact of this kind of extremely important at the time in the US experimental culture about ecology, ecological architecture, and of course also because you grew up in the forest, the fact that the first impact in the world for you was actually the life of trees, so to say.
Yes, indeed. The dome is a womb, and I think that that moment of my own birth somehow is very formative for the rest of my work, and I acknowledge that also in terms of my own rereading of that historical moment and reactivation of a lot of the wild experiments of what we could call outlaw architecture. You know, I think there's often an impulse with some of this work that's so historically framed and so marked by a particular historical moment to kind of dismiss it as a failed utopia. And I've always thought, well, there's truth to that, and that there's a humorous side to these failures, but there's also so much that is nascent in those experimental moments that can be reactivated and that we can learn from. And so a lot of my work does kind of go back to that primary moment in my own life and try and think what's useful here, what can be recuperated.
And that is also, I suppose, why you have, or you had since the beginning, this kind of very strong relationship with architecture in a way, which is always present in your work also, I suppose, no?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think particularly architecture within the exhibition space or within the context of art exhibition is a very special zone without the rules that are contingent upon most architecture. So there is this ability to experiment and to play. And it's also, I think, you know, really a space of community and collaboration that leaves open possibility. So in that sense, a model space.
And what I was reading in one of your interviews that you once said that speaking about the current situation and the climate change and so on, that nowadays there is I'm quoting, there is no side, non-side, and even the distinction of inside and outside is completely illusory. So do you think that this project, the water schools, is also in a way like the best embodiment of this impossibility to distinguish an outside and inside in a way? And the use of architecture also for stressing this, or not the use, but the perversion of architecture in a way for making this distinction even more impossible in an elementary sense.
Yeah, I think for me the problem with the site non-site dialectic is that it is a binary, that it really creates a distinction and even an opposition between two spaces, an urban space and a rural space, or an inside and an outside. And I think the work that I'm doing, the work that we can talk about today, is an attempt to really remain in the porosity of a practice that is fluid, that can be anywhere, that can be inside and outside, and that also doesn't really depend on even the category of authorship. You know, I think one of the things that I think is so interesting in the ideas that you are writing about is this idea also of two-way communication circuit between people and other living beings, trees, and to think really about what that conversation means.
So could you speak for us a little bit about also the birth of the project? When did you get the idea of building of the water school? We know that I mean, the project started by, or it's like a reappropriation of Barr's Zoom house, which is in New Mexico, built in the 70s. It's again another perfect example of this amazing, as you said, failed utopias or amazing, actually, ecological struggles in the US or in America, North America in the 70s. How did you get this, the idea of the project?
Well, I think that many of these ideas were nascent in, or kind of latent in the architecture itself, right? So Bayer's building, the Zohm house that he built for himself in Albuquerque, New Mexico, is a form of a geodesic dome. It's related to the domes that he was building at Drop City, the first hippie commune nearby in Trinidad, Colorado. But there was another important step with the Zohm house, and that was to kind of work with passive solar ideas, an idea, developed during kind of the energy crisis in the US, or global energy crisis in the 70s, to try and make energy efficient building. And so it's a building that works with sunlight and water to heat and cool itself. A really very simple principle, but that's also connected to older ideas and practices of building in the Southwest, indigenous practices passive solar. So a lot of those ideas were implicit within the architecture, but then something really important happened at that point. You know, in my own life, I went to Standing Rock and was exposed to the kind of indigenous thinking around water, and the idea that we're all connected by water, and so right at about that time, another Standing Rock, of course, became a quite a large movement to block the pipeline, the Enbridge pipeline coming through Standing Rock, North Dakota. And at the same time, I started hearing about another struggle over clean water in Nevada. And if I can now, maybe I'll just start to show some images from that. So this is Spring Valley, Nevada. It's in the northeast corner of Nevada, kind of on the edge of Utah. And it's an area you can see a virtually uninhabited area that's the traditional lands of the Goshute and Shoshone people. And at this time, well, you know, in 2015, 2016, when I first heard about it, there had been plans for over 30 years to build a pipeline, a water pipeline from Las Vegas to Spring Valley, Nevada. So that's about 500 kilometers, 550 kilometers, this massive $15 billion project to pump groundwater from this high desert valley for the city of Las Vegas. And you can see actually from this picture, it's called Spring Valley because it's got these springs everywhere. Off to the left-hand side of this image, there's a little blue spot there, and that's Cedar Spring. We'll zoom in there, but you can also see just the geography here. From the hills, the forested hills down into the basin there, you can see this kind of trees that are growing in this landscape. They're Rocky Mountain junipers. And here's Cedar Spring, which is one of over 100 springs in Spring Valley. And this is where Water School Project is the permanent location of the Water School Project. I bought this property some time ago after hearing about the efforts to protect Basawabi. Basawabi is the Spring Valley area, and Basawabi in the Shoshone language means a kind of a marshy area where these trees grow. This tree is, this population of trees are known as the swamp cedars, and they grow only in this one valley. It's a tree that grows in other foothills, but never in valleys. And in this one valley, this tree is found. And
they are also genetically special, you said, no?
They are. They're genetically unique. They to live in this kind of brackish, high saline water. You can see there's not a lot of surface water, but there's groundwater there, and it's a very kind of brackish water. So the trees have evolved over thousands of years to live in this dry lake bed, essentially, at 5,000 feet elevation. Nowhere else in the world do they grow in this condition. So it's a genetically unique tree. And in the colonial period of colonial settlement of this area in the 1860s, 1870s, 1890s, there were a series of massacres of Goshute Shoshone people at this site. This was a special, a significant cultural site where people would gather from all over the West for autumn ceremonies to collect pine nuts and to meet in large groups. And they were ambushed and massacred by the U.S. Army and by private Mormon militias at this time. So those massacres, there were very few survivors. There were two young girls, a 9 and 10-year-old girl, who survived the last massacre in 1897, but hundreds of men, women, and children were killed here. And today, that site is considered a sacred cultural site by the Goshute Shoshone people. Literally, these trees are considered to be ancestors nourished by the blood that was spilled there. And so I first heard about this through Chairman Rupert Steele of the Goshute tribe and Delane Spilsbury, an elder of the Shoshone tribe, who is a linear descendant of one of those two girls who survived the last massacre. And together they stood up and defended the trees. They spoke for the trees and explained that if water is pumped from this valley, it would immediately lead to the collapse of the ecosystem, and the trees would be the first thing to go. And at the time that I first learned about this, they were really two small voices standing up against a massive apparatus of state and corporate power. The city of Las Vegas, the state of Nevada, the casino and hotel industries, everyone really was very eager to see this project realized. And Delane and Rupert stood up and just repeatedly told the story of this place. And it was what brought me to the area to, to try and imagine what an artwork can do in this kind of situation, in this kind of frontline ecological struggle, but also in terms of creating a space for community. I also, before I show the Water School project, I just wanted to quickly show another tree, another relative of the swamp cedars. This is a population of bristlecone pines that grows just nearby in the same area. And these are considered to be some of the oldest living beings on the planet. These trees can grow to be 3, 4, even 5,000 years of age, although they don't get very big. They are this kind of dwarf high alpine tree. Here I have a very quick little video of the area. And though these are distinct from the swamp cedars, they look really similar. And there are all these kind of relationships between, botanically between the trees, of course, but then I also think about those relationships between humans and trees, and this relationship of care that's, first of all, allowed these 5,000-year-old beings to exist today, and then that can lead us to the protection and care of a threatened population of trees like the swamp cedars, like Pasawabi. So coming back to the site here, we purchased this land, about 40 acres, in 2018 with the intention to build a school here of some kind, a remote place for the study of the trees and the relationship between the trees and the water. And in the intervening years, much to my surprise, and I think to the surprise of everyone really, the effort to protect Pasawabi was successful. The state scientists were proven wrong by the indigenous ecological knowledge of this site. It was proven that any pumping of the groundwater here would have immediate effects on the environment. And so it was a rare and kind of beautiful case where a federal judge listened to this story that Rupert and Delane had been telling, and affirmed it, effectively blocking the pipeline project. So it's now at a point where we continue to work on the preservation of this land and to think about how to work in collaboration with that site and with the cultural and ecological components of that site. And so this is the structure of the water school building as it first exhibited in Basel, and as the project has evolved, it has disarticulated into a series of different smaller structures.
Can you just, before you keep on speaking about the different embodiment or resurrections of the project, I was really struck by something you said, and you repeated very often, that you built this dam, this house, or you take the house in order to make the water visible, in order to see the water. I think there is something extremely beautiful in this idea that you build a structure, an architectural structure, which is extremely rigid, even if it's like, in the case of this kind of architectural structure, they are pliable and so on. But to build a house in order to make an element, which is one of the most entropic elements we deal with, finally visible. What did you mean by that? And why do we need, in a way, a house in order to let the water, which is like, as you just said a couple of minutes ago, like one of the most important element in the world, it's something that connects us all. Why do we need to build a house, to make the water finally visible, in your opinion? And also, how did you invent a house that can do this job? Because it's in a way, because what struck me is the fact that normally we consider that the house must protect us from water. It's like from rain, from and what does it mean to twist the nature itself of a house, to expose us or make us closer to this element, not to put a distance.
Right. Well, the original Bayer house had this feature in this large window that we're looking at here, the south-facing facade, and and in the original house, the beautiful view through this window are blocked by this rack of 55-gallon drums. That was the solar collector that would collect the heat of the sunlight to heat the structure at night. And I've kind of compressed that principle into a double pane sheet of glass. The idea being that this could be a water-filled facade that would act also as a solar collector, but then like really literally act as a lens, a way to see the water and to see the world through a lens of water. And yet, you know, in its various permutations, like I said, it's always a model, right? And in an exhibition space, there is this sense of play and of being able to experiment. This is another permutation of the project built here in Los Angeles near the LA River. And you can see it was photographed on one of those rare days in Los Angeles where it actually rains. But when it rains outside, it rains inside as well. It's not a completely watertight structure. There is this component of the model, and so when we held events here, we would feel the rain inside as well, which I thought was kind of funny. And the structure continues to act as a platform and as a stage for these conversations and experiments in various different landscapes or waterscapes related to water, and that interface between water and trees.
And what is interesting is the fact that perhaps exactly because this house is supposed to be an interface between us and the water, which, as I said, is like you also said it's an entropic material. It's also perhaps because of that the project seems to be like endless, or in a way that project is like appearing several times, changing forms, even if it's the same project, exactly like the water, it's the same, but it's always changing form. Because I suppose that you will be with this project for a lot of time. I mean, in your future, it's not a finished, or it's not a, you cannot finish this kind of project, I suppose. No, even if you, because you said you will produce a sort of a side project in the Cedar Valley, but even in this case, the project will change form and undergo to a lot of metamorphosis, I suppose. No,
it may be an unfinishable project. I think what I've started to realize now, you know, I've worked on it for in a concentrated way for the past 5 years, but really much longer than that. And there isn't really a finished form to the project. It does keep sort of mutating, or it's in a process of constant metamorphosis as it encounters different site conditions in each of its permutations. And that really extends also to the collaborative process of its inception and articulation and building. You know, from the beginning, this is a work of appropriation. I appropriated the form from Steve Baer, and I collaborated with him in the early phases of the project. But as it's evolved, I've collaborated very closely with the architect Jerry Garcia, who's helped to take this one single family domestic home and atomize it into something much more public, into something that's permeable and porous. And now in the long ongoing collaboration with the Goshu tribe and the Shoshone tribe, the idea of a fixed object or an individual vision has really just kind of been abandoned in the favor, the metaphor here in this rendering. You can see this is another kind of potential vision of what water school might look like, and it's got two circles. There's an inner circle, which is like just really a fence to protect the reservoir and the spring there from grazing and to begin the process of ecosystem restoration. But then around that is a larger circle of poles, and it's modeled after the arbor, the powwow arbor, this large circular structure used for gatherings, and it's a metaphor for community that is that's open. It's not a fence. It's more of a mark on the land.
Which is also a kind of land art project, because one question that I had would be, what is your relationship? I mean, you're really doing another stuff also, because I think, unlike what land artists made, you consider land as something which is inhabited and alive. But what is your relationship with this tradition, if I may ask?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really it. This idea that the land is inhabited, and I think that was a kind of fatal flaw of a lot of the first generation of colonial American land art. I think we should make that distinction, because there are many generations of land art, but one that we associate with figures like Heiser and Smithson made the fatal mistake of really treating these places as a tabula rasa that was uninhabited and not really working in consultation with the communities who live there. So, of course, I'm very clear that the thing that brought me there, the stories that brought me there, were the stories of Delane and Rupert and the communities there will be the ones who really make a project like this possible. And I think also in terms of the lifespan of a project like this, which I think inevitably will kind of be extend beyond my own lifetime, just like in the sense that it began before I was born, and so inevitably it extends beyond my lifetime. And for me, that's really also an opportunity to think about an expanded idea of authorship. And I really come back to the duration of the resistance movement to protect this water. Chairman Steele began this work 30 years ago. And he sadly just passed away in January of this year. But he was able to see this kind of momentous victory. And I think about it often because there's no physical monument there. There's no object. It's really just the life of those trees that is continuing. And for me, it's really a challenging conception in terms of what an artwork can and should try to do.
Yeah, also because I was thinking this extended idea of authorship, of course, you are including trees in a way, of course. I mean, they are co-author with you of the work, and water. You said, because there is also, I was thinking in comparison to this old tradition of land art, in your work, there is something, and even in this idea that you had to build a house in order to let the water become visible, that there is a touch of animism. Once you said also that materials have their own minds, as if everything, even water would be animated in a way. And in a way, in your work, in the last image you showed, in the rendering you showed us, the water is also an artist, also with you and the others. So in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I think really to just acknowledge the vast creative power of water, what it enables, what it makes visible, and to really develop a sense of respect for that. And it also, it always comes back to something really ineffable and even invisible. Just if you look at this image, right, like there's the water is visible as water in the reservoir, but of course it's also
everywhere,
in the clouds.
in the clouds, of course,
and then it's underground. That's kind of the crux of this whole conservation movement, was the debate over water that isn't visible, that's all underground, and it's remains very difficult to calculate, to quantify, but we can learn to see it. We can learn to learn from it.
Yeah, well, I would love to stay for hours, I think, to you, but I think we have to close our conversation. I don't know if you would like to add something. Just I want to say that I really hope that this project will act like a virus and spread, in multiple forms everywhere, because what you are doing could be redone or rethought also in other parts of the world, not just where you are. Because in a way, as you said, since water is like everywhere and it's not visible, in the most part of the, perhaps we have to multiply your water schools everywhere in every single continent and every single space.
I feel that in so many ways, water school is everywhere, that it's everywhere where a tree is growing. And if we can kind of learn to see a tree as a kind of a form of historical memory, cultural memory, and of course as an expression of water, that we can deepen those conversations that we need to have with our own environment.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really been great.
Wow, thank you so much, Oscar and Emanuele. Maybe you want to stop the screen sharing with all the images that we had. It was really fantastic, and so I know this word is used way too much, but really inspiring, meaning that I take so many notes. It really highlighted so many concepts about land art, working with communities, minimalist architecture, the fact that you were also creating on destruction, like you were saying at the beginning, and on the blood of population, and I was really fascinating by the fact that what you mentioned in the end, Emanuele, about the fact that this project really spreads all around the globe, like the water is linking us. This is what you said as an introduction, also, Oscar, because water links us everywhere, and your project seems to link us everywhere as well. So, well, thank you so much, and thank you for the memory of water, because this is also it's about the memory of water, and I think it is really important that we have discussed this aspect of your work. And hopefully a lot of people from Paris will go to see your shows around Europe. So I invite everyone to go to see the 3 shows that are lasting till the end of summer 2023. And yes, thank you so much for make us travel as well, because we were in Vestivière before, but we also traveled with Natsuko Uchino and so on. But I think it was really interesting to travel to Nevada and to some of those lands that we barely know. And I had a question also for the permanent land that you're and the water school that you're building. How would it be possible to access that? Because I know Nevada is far away, especially from France. And actually, I've been to Nevada like 2 months ago, and really, like, to me, this landscape in a way seem far away, even when you're there, because you have those long highway crossing, the state, and you kind of have the feeling that humans are not connected to them. So my question was, how is there a stop somewhere in the middle of this huge highway where you can stop and then go through a park? And because really this is an issue. It's not like our land in France where everything is so small and tiny and you can drive or walk more or less everywhere. I mean, the space in Nevada is really something from a European point of view that seems gigantic. And this is how it creates a sort of a distance from the landscape and from how we can be connected to it.
Yeah, I think there is the remoteness is definitely a component part of this place and what makes it so special. But there's the possibility now to to treat it as a public space so that people can visit, sure. But not only that, it's also, I think of it really as a broadcast site that, as it develops I think it exists as much right now, right here in Paris, as anywhere else, and that as it goes forward, it's possible to really think about those opportunities to see the site virtually, visually, and to expand this kind of circle of sharing.
Okay. Well, that's a nice conclusion. The circle of sharing. It's really nice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
it could be our last word. I mean, your last word, especially
Mm.
because right after you, we're going to welcome on stage 10 young people that we share again their ideas and their thoughts on environmental issues and solutions that they bring together. So yeah, so the circle of sharing is open in your project and on the stage as well. So thank you again so much, Oscar and Emanuele. I will now stop the recording and thank you all for watching.